Hi, and welcome to Athlete to Alumni webinar. This series will cover all things related to transitioning from the student athlete to the alumni role and teach you what you can do to help guide you through this transition before you even graduate. Each week, we'll cover a specific career industry to connect you with alumni who have had successful transitions themselves and allow them to give you advice on what you will need to prepare for. I'm Megan Bresney, and I will be the host for this series. This episode will focus on choosing a career field, and joining me today for this discussion is former football Terp, Andrew Isaacs. Andrew, how are you doing? We're happy to have you here.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm doing great. Just chilling another day.
Awesome. So I'm going to give a quick background on Andrew, and then I'm also going to give him a chance to explain himself at the end. So Andrew is a former member of the University of Maryland football team from 2013 to 2017, and also former Big Ten fellow. As a double Terp, he earned his undergrad degree in communications and his master's of science in business management from the R.H. Smith School of Business. Once he finished his time in higher education, Andrew took his skills and expertise that he learned at UMD to DC Public Charter School and began working for KIPP DC. He is now a teacher, coach, mentor, and most importantly, a positive role model for young men and women in the DC community. Andrew is wrapping up his second year as the sixth grade science lead teacher for KIPP DC Valor Academy and looks to continue to help Black and Brown children in the DC area. Andrew, once again, welcome. Super excited to have you here. You have a great background. I know, if you were a former Big Ten fellow, you have good experience. So really excited to get into our conversation today. So we'll just go ahead and jump right in to our first segment, which focuses on your story. So we know that each athlete's transition out of college and into the life after sports is very different. So what has life after sports been like for you?
Well, first of all, thank you for the introduction. Could I just have you record that intro, and every time I walk into a room, just play that for me?
I got you.
But regardless of my transition from athletics to, I guess, real life, it was different, right? So it starts off where everyone, obviously your whole life, since you're a kid. So I've been playing sports, basketball, football, soccer since I was 3-4 years old. So from there all the way up to you're 24, 20 years of nonstop athletics is weird. What am I working out for now? What am I doing? So that's always the biggest transition. But I think for me it was made a lot easier just working with our athletic department, working as a Big Ten fellow, getting to know Risa, working with Sue, April, all those people, because it was able to help me kind of just prepare my life for all right, it's not football every day. I have to actually be an adult now. So it wasn't as difficult as I anticipated it being, but it definitely had its challenges. You're used to doing certain things, you're just not doing it.
For sure. So we're going to get into a little bit more about what you've done since Maryland as we go through this. But just to kind of kick us off on a positive note, what was or what has been one post-graduation accomplishment that you've made so far?
I know this is probably may not resonate with some of our young viewers as much, but I bought a car. That was my biggest accomplishment. I didn't growing up in high school, I didn't drive because everything was so close. I was able to walk where I needed to go, and it took me a while to get my driver's license. But when I finally finished school, the first thing I did was get a car. So that was pretty cool.
That's awesome. So talk us through that a little bit. So I know that a lot of people struggle with building credit, and they kind of worry about that as they go through, and just the different financial pieces of that. So not even if it's not specifically buying a car, but just managing money after school. How has that been for you, and what kind of advice could you give to someone who's about to graduate themselves?
So I would say my money management skills, a lot of that started with being an athlete, right? So when you go out and you're a visual athlete or any athlete for that matter, and they give you a certain amount of money to pay your rent, to eat, to do all these different things. The biggest thing is knowing how to manage that, knowing how I know when another check is coming, I know how much I have until then, making sure you make a budget, make sure you're charting all those things. I learned a lot of that from, like I said, being an athlete. A lot of it also from being in the business school, using Excel, making sheets like that. Just making sure things are organized, because it's you realize you don't have an abundance of finances as you did before. It's everything's very finite when it's on your own, versus all I had to do was call our advisor and be hey, I need X, Y, and Z, and he can help me. Whereas you can't make that phone call anymore. It's just making sure that everything has been in order. You're just doing things just being able to predict when things are coming and being able to make organized decision.
I think that's good advice. So not to put a downer on the conversation, but the whole purpose of this is to cover, some of the harder aspects of transitioning and also just being, a student athlete. So we know that being an athlete comes with many challenges itself, and you've suffered from injuries during your career, which was obviously a very challenging time. So when you were going through that experience, did it shift your perspective on your life after sports? And then also, how did you stay positive during that time?
I will say, like obviously in terms of my athletic career, getting injured is probably terrible. But like outside of that, I would say it's a blessing in disguise. It allowed me to have the opportunity to start beginning my life beyond playing football, or really just my life in general, just like what to help me figure out what I really wanted to do. Most athletes, I will say, I don't want to speak for everybody, but some of the athletes that I know, and even myself included, when you're playing sports, like your main focus is like, okay, I'm a football player. And
Mhm.
like I'm doing school or whatever, but like I'm going to the league. Like that's what I'm trying to do. And if it's not the league, like I'm going to do something involved with football. When I got injured, I had the opportunity to step back and like reevaluate what things do I actually like. Like who am I really outside of being an athlete? You start exploring different things. You realize like like I really like cooking now. I really enjoy like being around children. I did a lot of volunteering, and I did a lot of just like mentoring and all those things. And some of my experience that I had as a result of me being able to compete um, allowed me to realize what some of my real passions are, and kind of led me to the path that I'm on right now. So I think that what helped me stay positive was one, like my competitive nature, and like all right, I am going to come back. So it's like just making sure I'm working my hardest to make sure I am back to who I am, where some being able to actually have the opportunity to compete again, but also just kind of realizing like I am somebody beyond playing football. So I think that really helped.
So for someone going through a similar situation, whether it's with injury or maybe they played, had a great 4 or 5 years and they're transitioning out, how would you, or what type of advice would you give somebody who is in that process? Maybe they don't have a passion or they haven't identified it yet. So kind of, if you didn't already know, how did you find that? Or how would you suggest someone to kind of figure out if they like cooking or like doing these different things that you identified for yourself?
Just being open, right? Like I think the biggest, like I said, when you're competing, like you're so tunnel vision sometimes that it's like my only focus is like, all right, I'm working out every day because I want to be able, I want to go run fast, or I want to be able to jump high, I want to be able to compete, I want to make it to the combine, whatever it may be. But just kind of opening yourself up to other opportunities. It's funny. There's an alumni who I spoke to. We had a networking event one day. This guy named Ralph Larry. He played safety for us a few years ago, and he said something really, really interesting. And when we were talking, and like I kept that with me forever. And it was like, you can do anything for a year. If you don't like it, you can stop it. But like, you'll never regret trying it for a year. So when he told me that, I was kind of like, you know what, kind of just being open to like new experiences, trying new things. And if I can do it for a year, like after a year, if it sucks, it sucks. But if I like it, then it's like, hey, I just found a new passion. I found something else to try. So just continuing to be open to new opportunities, being open to networking, meeting people, expanding beyond just your teammates or other athletes. Just because networking is the biggest piece when it comes to being a professional outside of just being an athlete.
So I think that's great advice for the students who are, still in all of this and trying to figure it out. So transitioning a little bit more to then again postgraduate life. So what was more of a challenge that you faced after Maryland, and then how did you overcome that, like post graduation?
Um, I would say that's the biggest challenge that I had.
It's good if you don't have a challenge.
Yeah, no, because I'm trying to think like, no, trust me, there's a lot of challenges that occur when you're not under, um, you're not on a team anymore. But I will say, one of the biggest challenges is just kind of realizing like it's me now. Like I'm the one that if the issue arises, like it's not like, yeah, you have friends, you have mentors, you have people you can call, but it's not like it's no longer like, all right, I'm gonna call my coach and my coach will erase any mistake anymore.
Mhm.
Where I'll call my aunt, or for other people, mom or dad or whomever, and then the mistake is erased. It's more like, okay, if there's something going on, what am I gonna do to deal with it? Like, and then recognizing like, all right, what resources do I have that I can reach out to kind of get that back. So I think that was something, one of the biggest things I kind of overcame, and just kind of was a challenge, but ended up becoming something that I learned, was like being able to lean on resources and connections that I made, and realizing that like you can't do everything by yourself.
Mhm. That I think that's really good advice, and that kind of leads me into a little bit into our next question here. So focusing a little bit more on time management. So post college, what was it like to own your own schedule? I know that you mentioned you have several passions outside of not only work, but athletics and things like that. So talk to me about that and how you find time to do what you enjoy while also staying on top of your responsibilities.
Well, believe it or not, that part was probably the easiest part. So like when you are competing, like your life is very scheduled, right? From the time you wake up to the time you exercise to the time you eat, to the time you study, all those things, whether study hall, all that stuff. So kind of following along that same kind of regimen kind of helped me with that. So it was like, all right, I need to schedule all the time. It was like, okay, I'm gonna get up so I can work out. Right. And if I don't work out, I won't feel well. And then it's like, so I have my training schedule. I have my actual school schedule because I'm a teacher. So when I'm teaching, like that's a certain amount of time. When that's over with, I have the time set out to like, all right, I'm coaching. So this and we have practice, or this we have that. And then like also making sure like I'm making time for myself, like on the weekend, whether that's hanging out with friends or whether that's catching up on TV shows or whatever I need to be, is just kind of just following along that same routine and finding whatever your routine is. I think that's the biggest thing because as athletes, we're as humans in general, we're creatures of habit. So even more so as an athlete, you have to make sure you have habits and routines that you can follow.
It's so funny because you're like the third person in this series that has said that same exact answer of like sticking to the same type of like routine or like time blocks that you had in college. So I definitely think for the students that are listening, that should definitely take that out of it because everyone's saying it. But so talk to us. I know, like you just mentioned, and even in your bio, you obviously do a lot of things within what your role is as being a teacher. So could you talk to us a little bit more about what you do, first of all, like being a teacher, but then also the outside stuff that you've picked up as well?
So my actual title is I'm the science lead teacher. So I'm sixth grade lead teacher. I teach science to the 12 and 13-year-olds of DC, right? But beyond that, like teaching is much more than just like what's in the textbook or what's like doing experiments and stuff like that. It's like you're building relationships with these children. You're becoming part of their lives, whether that you're being a mentor, whether that being a sort of a father figure or a bigger brother figure or whatever it may be, whatever the child needs, whatever people in your building need, that's what you become. So for me, my roles extend beyond just like doing experiments. I pick kids up when we go play basketball, or am the assistant basketball coach. Was supposed to be a football coach, but unfortunately, with the way that COVID shook out, things didn't work. But when we go back, I will be helping with football. Also, help do some of the other programming outside, like where we're doing mentoring programs and we're doing things like that. So I'm just trying to like just being there for the children and the adults in the building is really what my role is in the school.
That's awesome. Thank you. I'm going to go into it a little bit more in our next section too, because I think that the things that you've incorporated into, like, let's say, obviously you went to be a teacher, but you've done a lot more and kind of filled your different passions in various ways. So I do want to talk about that a little bit, but we're just going to jump into our segment 2 here and focusing more on, so the first one was on your story. This segment's going to be more about their story. So the student athlete's story and how they can enhance it, as they're going through it, in real time. So being an alumni yourself now, what are things that student athletes need to know to make their transition more smooth?
Like I mentioned before, networking is everything. Being able to have those resources, being able to like have people in your corner, people who can vouch for you, I think that is the most important thing in terms of your success beyond school. Because what happens is when you go and try and work for these jobs, and when you go and try and interview with these people, first thing you can do is call people that know you, right? And the more people that can speak highly of you, the more people that will vouch for you, the better off you'll be. I tell some of the students that I talk to all the time now is that a lot of jobs that people have, to be honest with you, unless you're trying to be a doctor, a neurosurgeon, or a law student, like most times, like they'll teach you how to do it. Like it doesn't really matter like what your expertise was. Like if you're really good at it, sure, but like more than anything, they hire people that they like, people that they can trust, and people who they want to have around them. So the more people that like you, the more people that trust you, the more people that enjoy you being around them, the better off you'll be. So just making sure that you're continuing to make positive impressions on people, and continue to make great connections with people on campus, and then even outside of campus, if it's in the community, that'll help you.
Awesome. I think you led me right into this next question here, but you have a unique experience because Maryland Made wasn't an established unit while you were a student athlete, but then it was kind of in the works as you were in grad school and finishing up at Maryland. So you were obviously tapped into the different resources a little bit, but two questions for you. So how did you get ready for your career while being a student athlete? So anything outside of what Maryland Made does now. So did you utilize any campus resources, faculty, things like that? And then also during your time working in the athletic department, what resources or connections do you think that student athletes should utilize?
Um, well, I'll start with the second part of your question. Resource I think that they should utilize. Uh, Maryland Made. Like everybody, you, Tim, Risa, Sue, April, like making sure you're connecting with you guys. You guys have, like I said, if I had the opportunity to, as a student athlete, work with you guys, like that would have been, who knows what I would be doing now. Not to say it's not great, but like it's just a great experience, and it's amazing to know that there's people out here who care so much about your development beyond just who you are as an athlete. I think that that's just a phenomenal opportunity that everybody should be taking advantage of. Into the first part of your question, resources that I used was just again like reaching back to um, like the network of people I met. For the only reason I even had the opportunity to get into graduate school was through connections that I had with Sue, right? So like when she was working with football, had opportunity to talk with her, and she was like helping me get on the path to go to school. And then when things shook out the way they did, she was able to help me work with Maryland Made, help me work with GSAC, all those different things where I was had the opportunity to further my education and then start my career after that.
So we have a lot of students who are interested in pursuing a career, in either the sports industry or even in education. So talk to me a little bit about how you made your decision to become a teacher and how you are still able to be involved in athletics now.
So one thing I will say is in charter schools, they allow you the autonomy, like the opportunity to have your own autonomy, right? Like whatever you want to be, they'll let you be that, right? So like even in my interviews, I led with like, hey, while I do like I am interviewing to be a teacher and I want to like teach children, my main passion is like athletics and helping children through athletics. So being like advocating for yourself and voicing what your goals and plans are and being transparent with companies, I think that will help you the most in your search for what you're trying to become and what you want to do. The way I was able to do that was just being just like my genuine, authentic self, and just trying to be myself, bring myself to these companies and show them that I'm really here for the development of their children and their future.
So I know you talked about, obviously identifying what your passions are, but wanting to be in the sports industry, I'm sure that you have, further out goals down the line of how you can get more involved. So how do you stay encouraged to, continue to navigate the next step of your career and continue to like work towards your passion and your purpose?
I would say, like again, it has a lot to do with just my personality as a former athlete, or at least like taking on new challenges every day, right?
Mhm.
Like, understanding like the biggest disadvantage that I think I had going into the workforce was just like because I was an athlete for so long, because I've been in school for so long, I lacked maybe experience, right? So like now that I'm getting experience, I want make sure that the experience that I'm getting is helping me prepare me for what my ultimate goal is, and the only way to do that is by taking control of what that experience is. So continuing to just like I said, advocate for what I want, talk about who I want to be, and just kind of verbalize it and show them that you can do that within the means of like what your actual role is. You don't want to deviate too far from what you're actually doing, but just making sure you're doing your job to the best of your ability, being the best at what you can be, and then also just continuing to show that you're trying to push towards what you're trying to do.
So from like a resume and career or experience standpoint, how did you market yourself as like being a student athlete to your advantage through not only teaching but whatever jobs you were applying to after college?
So that's one thing that a lot of jobs will be incredibly impressed with is just like the amount of discipline it takes to be a student athlete, right? Like the first question that most interviewers will ask you, especially if you do put that you were an athlete on your resume, which everybody should, is they're going to ask you, like, how are you able to manage your time? How are you able to stay focused? How do you work in teams? How do you work in groups? Like, how do you feel like that? And like, as an athlete, there's no bigger advantage because that's literally what your life is, right? You're working with teammates, you're working with other people to the best of your ability to create, to win games, to do whatever it is that you guys do, championships. So just saying that you have the ability to work with people, having the ability to stay on task, the ability to compete, the ability to bring your best self every day, because as you know, if you don't, as a student athlete, your position can be taken or you're trying to take a position. So um, I think that is the biggest thing that I was able to market to people when I was telling them that I was a former.
Awesome, thank you. So what specific advice would you give students who are either in a major that they're not sure they want to pursue like an actual career in, or they're just not sure what they want to do, period? What advice would you give to them? Just try to like take steps towards finding that way and really just not being so, stuck in what their major is versus like what they can do outside of athletics and after college.
Okay. So in terms of like what you're studying and what your degree is, it depends on how far along you are, right? Like if you're like towards the end, finish it, because that's the most important thing. Like once you get that degree, nobody can take anything away from you. And you can always go back to school or always try and get certifications and things that you feel like you're more interested in later down the line. But definitely finish. Like that's my biggest part, is make sure you graduate. But I would say beyond that, intern is the biggest thing. Just get experience, work experience, try different things. Like I said, you can do it for a year, you can do it for a couple of months. If you don't like it, you can switch and do something else, but you've had that experience. And also networking again. I know I'm gonna say a lot of the same things over and over again, but networking and like experience are the two biggest pieces to being a professional. Um, just making sure you know people and people can speak highly of you, and you can speak highly of people as well. Because the more you move along, it's like, all right, they're gonna connect you. Make say, hey, do you know Megan? I'm like, yeah, I do. She's a phenomenal person. So it's like all of that stuff. Oh, I know Megan too. And now everybody's cool. So just continuing to meet people, continue to network, and keep creating experiences for yourself. The worst thing you can do is sit back and think that being an athlete is going to cover everything for you. You have to kind of be proactive, like advocate, like not advertise you being an athlete, not let the athlete advertise you.
I love that. And we definitely, see the value in mentorship. We have a ton of programs that we're doing now that involve mentorship, but we made a whole segment on this just to talk about kind of mentorship and staying connected. So rolling into segment 3, how can student athletes stay connected to UMD after graduation?
Just showing up, like being involved. I mean, I know it's different if you're like, obviously if you're long distance or if you don't even move out of the area, but if you're in the area, like keep in touch, stop by, come see some of the athletes, come see some of your former coaches, talk to the AD, talk to building off those networks that you've made before. Just keep checking in, being a member of the M Club, doing all those different things, like just making sure you're staying tapped in, so that way that people know that you care about the university and you care about not even just the university, but just like the athletes and the people that are there as well. Just trying to give back as much as you can. For me, my biggest thing is like talking to some of the football guys now, or even some of the basketball guys, or even staying in communication with you guys. Like that is for how I'm able to give back. Because the more I know about what's going on at the university, the more I can advertise the university in the various places that I am. The more I do that, the more that'll bring it in, and it just all works in a circle like that.
Definitely. So you mentioned giving back, but what does it mean to you to give back to the university, and how can our current student athletes take advantage of those who are willing to give back beyond like the financial support? So the people who are, showing up at these events and willing to get on calls like this, how can they really take advantage of that?
Network. I feel like network is like the only answer, but it really is. Like honestly, it's the continuing to, like, for example, I was a beneficiary of like our CTR program at KIP, right? It was like a teacher training program. As a result, because I did it, I ended up moving into a lead teaching program, right? Because I am now I'm a member of that, alumni of that, also an alumni of Maryland, I can now refer any Maryland student to be a CTR. And now we now have a pipeline or connection between KIP and Maryland, right? And that's just me. Now imagine if you work at a Fortune 500 company, if you work at Saks or Goldman Sachs, or if you work at Nike, Under Armour, wherever I can't say Nike, Under Armour. Say you work at like, yeah, exactly. So say you work at any of these other places and you build that bridge. Now that is your way of giving back, right? Like you were able to now create a pipeline between whatever your company is or whatever organization you work for, or whatever organization you're affiliated with your institution. So that is now given an opportunity to someone who was once in your position to do the same thing you did, if not better.
So we talked to the student athletes a lot about the opportunities that we have for them to be mentees, and receive, I guess, the benefits of having a mentorship relationship. But I know that you are currently now a mentor. So talk a little bit about, what your experience as a mentor has been and kind of what student athletes could get out of like expanding their mentorship beyond their time right now.
So I mentor a few students at our school, and also there are also few former athletes who I talk to as well on a regular basis. And I will say that as an actual mentor, the benefit that I get is it allows me to like I get stay tapped in, also be able to like realize what you actually know, right? Like you don't really know what you know until you're saying it to someone, right? Like you have all these ideas in your head and you've learned all these things, but until you're teaching and you're like showing people stuff, that's how you actually know you know something, right? So by being a mentor, that keeps me sharp. And by being a mentee, you're also getting game, you're getting knowledge, you're getting all this information from somebody who's walked where you've walked, like literally ran where you ran, did everything you've done, and they now have the perspective of like, hey, I was talking to my 19-year-old self. This is what I would say, and now you have the opportunity to talk to your 19-year-old self person. So I would say if I'm a student athlete right now in Maryland, like I'm running to go find a mentor. I'm running to go find somebody because it's not so much that they're trying to tell you what to do because they want to tell you what to do. It's more like we want you to not make the mistakes that we made or take advantage of the opportunities that either weren't there or the ones that we didn't take advantage of.
Sure, that's awesome. Thank you. So I know that, well, as we wrap up here, I've talked to a few different former football student athletes through this series, and they seem to all have said that they didn't take advantage of either networking opportunities or whatever, and had, the excuse of it's too tired after practice or whatever the case is. So if you could give not only just to the football student athletes, but to any student athlete who is just kind of like doesn't feel like they have the time to network, or maybe they're even, hesitant, they don't feel comfortable going up and trying to introduce themselves to someone. I know that you hammered down networking. So what kind of tips could you give for someone who might feel a little uncomfortable or might not be, as open to attending different networking events?
I would just even if you don't feel comfortable going by yourself, I would just like reach out to the people you are comfortable with. Like 9 times out of 10, you are comfortable with the people who are in your academic staff. 9 times out of 10, you are comfortable with your coaches or some of your other teammates who have access to other stuff. So if it's like you're talking to them like, hey, maybe we should go together or convince each other that it's cool to like go to these events. Cause like that 15-minute nap is not gonna make you that much more. It's not gonna make you that much more rested for practice. Trust me. I've been there before. I know you're still gonna be tired. So trust me, it's not like when I'm saying like going to these events, like you gotta go and sit there for hours and talk to the athletic director or talk to the owner, CEO or whatever. It's just kind of just going there, getting your name out there, being visible. People see you, they recognize you. More than likely, you're probably the largest person in the room, so people are gonna be like, "Oh, you must be an athlete." So have that conversation with them, and even if you're not, it's like people know when athletes walk. So you're just having those conversations and just kind of just being trying your best to be confident. Like I know it's much easier said than done, but it's just something that takes practice. And the more you do it, the more comfortable you'll feel.
Awesome. Thank you. So closing out here, you definitely have gave us some valuable information, and I know I'm thinking a lot, but I'm sure the student athletes are, getting the ball rolling on what they could be doing now. But as we close out, just going to give you the opportunity to give like one final gem, one piece of advice that you wish you knew when you were an athlete, or just would like to share now.
Network. So no.
We get it.
Nah, I would piece of advice that I would give. Enjoy the moment, right? Like I think oftentimes, like even if like I don't know if we have high schoolers listening to this too, but so often people kind of just like, what's our next step? What's our next step? What am I going to do after this? What am I going to do after this? Whether it's high school, like, oh, I'm ready to go to college, or whether I'm in college, like I'm ready to go to pros, or whatever it may be. Just enjoy the moment, enjoy where you are, because those 4 to 5, 6 years, unfortunately, how you want to say it, years go like this. So it's like you want to make sure you're enjoying the time with your friends, continuing to meet people, enjoy the experience. Maryland is one of the most beautiful campuses on the planet. It's some of literally the best years of my life. So I would definitely tell you to just kind of enjoy it, soak it in, be open to anything, try anything, and just kind of, leave a good impression on people. Because at the end of the day, that's really what it's about. When you step away from it, it's like, hey, I remember that guy. Like, had a really good time when I seen him, or he really treated me really nice, or he was really respectful to me, or he's a really brilliant kid, or whatever it may be. And you never know, like, the person that you shook hands with, um, like at lunch one time, he could be the person who's sitting behind the interviewing room for you, and now you're like, oh, I remember him. Like, we were talking, we had a good conversation at that alumni dinner. So just making sure you just enjoying the moment, leaving good impressions on people, and that worked.
Definitely network. Well, thank you so much for being here. Just want to give one chance if you want to share your contact information or anything for anyone who's watching who might want to stay connected to you, or how they can find you on social media, things like that.
Yeah, for sure. If you want to follow my Twitter, it's A_Isaacs44. If you want to follow my Instagram, it's Drew Diamonds04 on Instagram. And then if you need my email, I'll probably save the email. But if you do want to get in contact with me, just feel free to hit Megan up, and I'll definitely reach out. I'm more than happy to get anybody, have any conversation. Doesn't even have to be advice. Like, just kind of want to just talk about what your experience is or anything like that. More than happy.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Andrew. We're so happy to have had you on this. And hopefully the students will take advantage of everything and connect with you afterwards. So thank you. And with that, we're going to close out this episode of Athlete to Alumni.
Thank you so much.